I'm Caroline van Vlaardingen. Welcome to In Search of Dopamine, a podcast series that brings together healthcare professionals, people with Parkinson's, and caregivers to explore the challenges and symptoms and live with the disease. Hello, my name is Caroline van Vlaardingen, and welcome to In Search of Dopamine. In this podcast episode, we will explore the topic of preventing falls, since balance issues are a common issue for many people diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And joining me to discuss this topic today are Louise Mercier, who is a conference interpreter and also lived with a person with Parkinson's disease for many years and was a caregiver. Thanks for being here. And also we have Beth Robertson, who is an occupational therapist at the Montreal Neurological Institute, also known as the Neuro. Beth is also vice president of the Montreal University Health Centre's Multidisciplinary Council and is a guest lecturer at the McGill School of Occupational Therapy. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Hello. And thank you for being here to share with us today. So let's just start with a statistic. Recurrent falls are quite common in people with Parkinson's. About 80% of them are actually due to postural instability, which is one of the symptoms, and also something called freezing of gait, which we will get into in this podcast. But Louise, let's begin a little bit with your story. Yes. So you were living with a partner, Jean, for many years, and then he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. It started with tremors, but then he began having balance issues?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what he was noticing.
Well, it started, as you said, with what the doctor called at the time essential tremors, so shaking a little bit, his leg, his left leg, and his right hand shaking. And then following that, there were balance issues. At one point, we were just walking along Monkland, and he collapsed. He just sort of fell as if in a faint, and I was there to grab him, and that was fine. Then he was able to come out of it, but it was the first fall that I remember very vividly, and after that, I remember another fall. We go to the Magdalene Islands every summer, and in the house there's a staircase. He was climbing the staircase. Fortunately, I was behind him. He climbed 3 steps and then he fell backwards. So we went to the doctor to find out what we could do about this. And it was a gradual deterioration, as is common, I think, in Parkinson patients. But so
it was a big factor, and he was lucky to have you with him, right? Because sometimes people are alone when these things happen. And I want to bring you into this now, Beth, because I want to talk about what's happening with Parkinson's patients in the brain and the body that is causing them to be so unstable.
Yes. Well, I think as Louise alluded to, the balance problems didn't start right from the beginning. And I think that's important to know that initially when you're first diagnosed with Parkinson's, balance isn't typically an issue. So what's happening in the brain is essentially there's an area called the substantia nigra, and that's aging. And there are neurons that are dying. And when a certain amount of neurons die, you mentioned dopamine at the outset. So there is less dopamine that is being released. And dopamine is very important for our movement. It also is very important in terms of our cognition, our sleep, and also our drive and our motivation. So there's this lack of dopamine. And initially, you will see your doctor and they will diagnose you with Parkinson's. And the initial symptoms may be tremor, maybe slowness, maybe rigidity. But over time, over the years, gradually there's this continuum of neuronal loss and less dopamine. And eventually the postural centers become impacted.
Postural centers meaning how you carry yourself? Or?
The balance centers in the brain.
Right.
And this is when falls start to happen. So this could be 10 years into the disease, for example. If someone is having balance issues right at the beginning of the disease, it's usually a red flag for an atypical form of Parkinson's.
More aggressive?
Yes. So a different type of Parkinsonism. Mm-hmm. But for sure, balance will happen later on. But it's because of this neuronal cell loss in the substantia nigra, which is so important for movement.
And so that becomes a factor, fairly early in the disease, or you say it's a 10-year process?
Not necessarily a 10-year process, but initially when you're first diagnosed, usually balance is not a problem.
Right.
But as the disease progresses, balance will change. Nice. And it's important that we address this. If, for example, you're able to see a physical therapist who can do an evaluation and provide you with balance training, etc., to help combat the falls down the road.
Okay. You believe, Louise, I believe you said to me that you thought that maybe Jean's medications had something to do with his balance issues. Is that right? Am I?
Well, I think that, as Beth said, it's different for every patient. Mm-hmm. And so when you are prescribed medication, there's a period of time where the doctor has to assess its effect on you. I remember we went to Dr. Postuma. Mm-hmm. I was at the Montreal General. And at first, the medication was too powerful and required adjustment. But Jean seemed to be put to sleep. He would sleep during the day a lot because of the medication, which impaired his ability to move. Mm-hmm. So the transition was difficult, but I think that it's normal that patients go through that.
And that's important you mentioned moving, because moving is critical to patients with Parkinson's, right? Because if they don't move enough, things get worse. Is that right?
Yes.
So tell us about what patients with Parkinson's should be doing to counteract this.
So exercise, of course, is very important. Mm-hmm. If you are lucky enough to see a physical therapist to do an evaluation and to objectively evaluate your balance and provide you with balance exercises, they might also suggest to you that you do a boxing class or a Tai Chi or a dance class.
Why boxing, Tai Chi, and dance? Explain why those.
We're always trying to encourage big movements. The tendency with Parkinson's is to be, postural, stoop and closed in and rigid. So we're trying to encourage big movements and also dynamic balance. So with boxing, you're weight shifting, of course. And with the Tai Chi, you're doing long stretches. With the dance, it's a great activity because you're multitasking. So it is not only physical, but it is cognitive.
Mm-hmm. So, and it's fun too.
And it's fun.
Yeah, it helps if it's fun.
It is fun. And it's something you can also do with your partner, or some people might do a Zumba class, for example. But it's very important to exercise. And when we exercise, we do pump out more dopamine, which is what we need. And then you feel better after you exercise and you move better.
And you're also maintaining some muscle mass, which I think is probably important, right?
For sure.
So did Jean try any of these activities?
Oh, yes. He did boxing at the Cummings Center. And he quite enjoyed it. The teacher was just terrific. I mean, he made it fun. And it was provoking Jean, and Jean would retaliate. All right, I'll give you this, I'll give you that. So, yeah, it was
probably
very
good for your mental health, too, because if you're not happy about your diagnosis, being able to
and he much preferred that to, the other exercises, which he also did at the Cummings Center, which was more like, the step machine, the walking machine, and other things. Because dancing and boxing and Tai Chi are more fun, I think. They're more, you forget yourself.
And they're social. You're with other people, which is nice too, right? Because isolation could be an issue. So some of the other things that happen just daily around the house, let's talk about that, because exercise is one thing, but what are some of the other daily things that you recommend to patients, or when you do an assessment, to make sure that they're not falling in their daily activities?
First of all, just to go back, Louise mentioned medications and side effects of medications. So yes, some medications do cause fatigue, somnolence. And of course, when we're more tired, we could be more at risk of falling. Also, Parkinson patients have a tendency to be a little more hypotensive. So that means their blood pressure can be a little bit lower.
Right.
And medications also can lower your blood pressure when you're talking about medication. So this is important to talk to your healthcare team about. But at home, one thing to do is sometimes just to slow down. So first thing we do in the morning, we're getting out of bed. So instead of trying to jump out of bed, we can have this lower blood pressure. It's important to go slowly from lying to sitting, just to wait a little bit, sit to stand, to wait a little bit again, in case you have that drop in your blood pressure. Because if you do, you could become dizzy, you could faint, and that could lead to a fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's many other examples of things we can do at home. For example, getting dressed. Mm-hmm. So if there's 3 words you take home, it's sit versus stand.
Yes, absolutely.
So Jean heard those words.
Jean did not like to sit. I had to remind him.
Yes.
But then he would put one pant leg on, and I would say, "Oh my God, he's going to fall."
Yes.
Right. So.
Very important.
Very important. And we did have help from the CLSC, who taught him how to get in and out of bed, and different aids around the house. Like in the bathroom, for instance, we installed some, poles so that he could hold on to go to the bathroom and to sit, slowly. And for the bath. That was very helpful as well.
Right. And a chair in the bath for showering.
Yes.
And what did he do to get in and out of bed safely? What did you have to do there?
Well, what Beth said, you start slowly.
Yes.
And you sit up and then you just get up slowly.
Beth?
Sometimes we install a bed rail, which can help you to grab, to help turn onto your side, and teaching people to bend their knees to help with the turning.
And we had that on the sofa as well. Yeah, in the living room.
And Jean liked to do things. He was a fixer-upper, right? So you had to coax him down from a ladder occasionally?
Yeah, well, I think it's just human nature, that you want to keep doing the activities that you're used to doing. And you don't realize that there's a danger necessarily. And Jean liked to fix things, as you said. So he's at one point he's trying to go up a ladder, and I'm there, fortunately. I'm saying, no, you don't do that. You don't go up the ladder.
So you would have to encourage him not to do those kinds of things. And I guess that's part of being a caregiver, right? Is you're always watching out for things.
Yeah.
In terms of other things around the house, Beth, things like carpeting, furniture.
Yes.
Do you ever do assessments of the house or have people assess and say, okay, you could probably get rid of some of this stuff because you could fall?
So without even going into the home, you can interview a client and ask them about what their setup is. A lot of people have tiny throw carpets everywhere, and those are a tripping hazard. Gone are the days where we had a lot of phone cords, phone lines, because people used to trip on those. Having several pets, cats, dogs running around, those could be a tripping hazard as well. So you essentially want to remove clutter, have open spaces where people can navigate and mobilize safely, making sure areas are well lit. So when you're getting up at night, don't be afraid to turn on the light. Some people are afraid to wake up their spouse with the light on, but it's important to have good lighting. There are also motion detection lights. So when you're up, the lights will come on automatically, and these can be used to navigate to the bathroom or even on a staircase. Having things that you use most frequently at the line of vision or not lower than your knees. So if you're actively cooking, that you don't always have to get up on a chair to reach your favorite pot, because going up on a chair, like climbing a ladder, with time, we lose our postural reflexes. So there can be this tendency to go backwards. So we don't want people climbing up on chairs to reach things, to wash their windows, to climb ladders. That's very dangerous.
Beth, talk to us a bit about stairs. How much of a hazard are they?
Yes, so stairs can be a fall risk. I always suggest to my clients that they have handrails, and ideally on both sides. Frequently, for people who have basements, they don't even have a handrail, so that can be a great fall hazard. Also, when going up and down the stairs, I always tell my clients to look where their feet are positioned, because with Parkinson's, there can be a little bit of a change in our visual perception skills. So we might think that we've surpassed the last step, but we haven't, and we could misjudge the distance and have a fall. Looking at your feet also going up to make sure that your whole foot is on the step and not just the tippy toes, because they can slip and that could lead to a fall. So again, holding the handrail, some people like to carry their laundry basket down to the basement. And if they are, they're not holding anything, they can't see their feet, and this can be a risk for falling.
So what do you do instead of a laundry basket? What would you suggest?
You know, if you can get one of those laundry bags, and you can even throw the laundry to the bottom of the stairs and then get it when you get down there. Or if you have one of those big IKEA bags, when your laundry is folded, you can carry it up over your shoulder and then you're holding your railings. Or if you live with someone, you can ask your family member to carry up and down the laundry for you.
Yeah, that's great advice for anyone, really, because I think we all take a risk with the laundry basket on the stairs. I know I do.
For sure.
And did Jean accept railings in his house?
Well, Jean graduated in museum design and exhibition planning. So for him, design is, absolutely to be respected. And when it was suggested that we put a guardrail in on the other side, no. He said, no, c'est pas design. Which we didn't do. But he was very careful to always use the guardrail coming down.
The one guardrail.
The one, yeah.
Okay.
And we had a chair halfway so that he could sit.
On the landing. Okay.
Yeah, before going down the whole way.
Smart idea. Yeah. So he could take a rest before he did the rest of the stairs.
Exactly.
Oh, brilliant. And what about vision? How important is correct eyewear and vision?
For sure, as we get older, our vision changes, and we can have Parkinson's, but we can also have cataracts. We can have macular degeneration, glaucoma. So yes, seeing well, wearing your glasses, and our eyesight actually impacts our balance. Yeah. So it's very important.
Yeah, that's for all of us,
for
whether
all
you
of
have
us.
Parkinson's or not.
Definitely.
I want to talk about freezing of gait. We haven't really talked about that yet. Jean didn't have this, right?
No. With him, it was more lack of balance.
Right. He never sort of got stuck where he couldn't move for a bit.
No, that didn't seem to affect him.
But that can also affect balance.
It can. So freezing of gait, not all patients have it. A few do. And this is a very complicated process. It's like, as we know, the brain tells us how we move. It predicts all our movements and what we do, what we say. Our brain is in control of everything. And with freezing of gait, there's like a disconnect between our automatic stepping mechanism. So the feet want to move, but we just can't. So there's like a blockage there. So the individual has to use internal and external cues to try and break this pattern. And typically we will see freezing of gait when someone stands from a chair and is trying to initiate mobility, or when they are trying to do a turn, or going through a doorway, a narrow doorway, they could freeze. Or in a very stressful situation, if they're in a very crowded hallway or in a shopping mall with a lot of people and there's a lot of stress, then the feet will start to freeze.
And so what are some of the things that people can do to combat that?
So again, they're using self-cues. So one of the easiest ones is just standing in place and trying to do high knees in place. We tell them try and march like a soldier in place, and then all of a sudden the stepping pattern will resume.
Why does that happen by lifting the knees like that? What happens?
It's just a way to trick the brain just to change the attention. It's a complicated process, but it works. If you're living with a family member, even a family member putting their foot perpendicular to yours, and then they can step over it. Again, that will break the freezing of gait pattern. Stepping over a tile on the floor, or even internally counting 1, 2, 1, 2, or left, right, kind of like a metronome. That can also break the freezing of gait pattern. And then there are more fancy things that you can do. There are lasers that you can, for example, attach to a cane, and then the laser is jutting out in front of your foot, and then you can just step over the laser and then continue to walk that way.
Oh, so the laser is, again, a visual distraction?
Correct.
That allows the brain to make the connection, okay,
and
walk?
to initiate that stepping pattern.
And can you have them on more places than a cane?
You can. Actually, in Barcelona in 2023 at the World Parkinson Congress, there were a number of vendors there and selling lasers that go onto your shoes. So they strap onto your shoes and the lasers go out, and then basically you can initiate the stepping pattern.
Huh. Wow. So people are constantly coming up with new ways to override this.
Correct.
These symptoms. How interesting, and how technology is becoming involved. Speaking of technology, for people who live alone, and I know you had a concern about a neighbor.
Yes.
Tell us just briefly what was going on with your neighbor.
Well, she would tell me that at night when she took her pills, she would sit on the edge of her bed, take her pills, and go to sleep, and then wake up in the morning and find some on the floor.
And she has Parkinson's.
She had Parkinson's, but she lived alone. So that was a source of stress for me. And also that she had help from the CLSC, and they would come, and sometimes she couldn't get out of the bed to answer the door because she had, I guess, freezing of gait, you would call it, even though you're in bed, her legs wouldn't move. Okay. So that was another source of stress for me, as a neighbor. And even though I told her at one point, you can't be alone. Again, I think most people want to stay home. And it took a long time before she finally decided to go into a home, which she did eventually.
So for people who do live alone, Beth, are there technological devices, things that they can use so that they're not completely unsurveilled?
So we do have, Apple Watches that have fall detection devices in them, also alarms for your pills, etc. There's also Lifeline, so either wearing a watch or a necklace around your neck. So if you were to fall and you needed help, for example, someone wouldn't be lying on the floor for 2 days before someone came to help them. We're fortunate in Quebec that we do have community care. We do have CLSCs, and it's important to engage your team, your neurologist, nurse, OTPT, to help you make sure that you have what you need at home. Of course, in a wonderful world, we would have more services than we do today, but it is important to engage your CLSC and perhaps have help. There's a program called Chèque Emploi Service, where the CLSC can give you a certain amount of hours, but you can hire someone that you feel comfortable with, that perhaps speaks your language. It could be a friend, it could be someone from your church who can come and help you in the morning. You might be able to give them a key to your house. So for that lady who is having trouble moving in the morning, they can have someone who they're familiar with to come and help them.
So there are great services out there for people who have this diagnosis. What about caregivers like Louise? And Louise, did you ever feel overwhelmed and that you perhaps needed more support?
Yes, because I think, again, it's human nature. You want somebody that you love to be there for you. You don't want a stranger coming into your house. So there's a certain amount of resistance on the part of the patients that you have to overcome. But at one point, and my friends were very helpful because they were saying there's no point in your overdoing it, because if you get sick, then who's going to help him? And it became, quickly for Jean, a situation where he needed somebody on a 24-hour basis. Because he had 5 pneumonias in a row, there was a tube inserted in his stomach, and he needed to be fed his medication every 2 hours and water every 2 hours.
This is at the end of the disease, right?
Yes, towards the end. But, this was day and night, although at night sometimes you could go 4 and maybe 6 hours, depending. And I couldn't do day and night. I just could not do it. So at one point I had to call upon CLSC to help us find somebody for the night. And of course, I don't know, I'm not sure they do that, but I think it was through a private agency as well that we got someone to come and be there at night.
So that you could get some sleep.
So that I could
well.
get some sleep.
Yeah, and be there for him during the day.
And his son came too, Nicolas, his son, a few nights, which was beautiful because they got to spend some quality time together. But at one point you need help, you really do.
What are the resources out there for caregivers as well?
Well, it's important to stay connected with Parkinson Quebec, and they can really tell you what's available in your region. A lot of our regional partners offer caregiver support groups. The Cumming Centre in Montreal has a caregiver support group. So during COVID, they were meeting online. However, I think now they're meeting again in person, because it's important not just to treat the individual with Parkinson's, but the caregiver and their health is very important. Like you mentioned, if you get sick, your loved one is up the creek, right? So again, Cumming Centre, it's important to tie in with your CLSC. A lot of the CLSCs will offer, a social worker perhaps that can help you in your time of need.
So I think we have a lot of really great information here for people. Is there anything you wanted to ask Beth, Louise, before we sort of wrap up here? Is there anything we didn't cover?
Well, we talked about medication, which was a concern, and we talked about services available for the caregiver. The CLSC gave me 2 blocks a week of 2 hours where I could just go out and go to the library, go to do some shopping or whatever I needed to do, which was also very useful. I can't think of anything else right now.
Yeah, I think we've covered it. Jean was the love of your life.
Oh, he was. He was such a sweet man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he really, I think he really appreciated that you were there for him.
Yes, and he was a very kind, thoughtful person. Did not want to impose on people. And actually, at one point he said, "Leave, just go. I want you to go. I don't want you to have to put up with this." I said, "There's no way. What are you talking about?" No. But there's also that concern in patients that they don't want to be trouble for other people, which is very moving.
Yeah, but you stood it out.
Oh, there's no way I could leave him alone.
And you were there for him every step of the way. So Beth, as someone who works in the field and works with Parkinson's patients, do you have any other closing remarks?
I think our healthcare system is not perfect, but we are very fortunate to be living in Quebec and in Canada where we have Medicare, and we have the opportunity to have services early on. And that's really important with Parkinson's disease. And I'm very proud of the neuro. This is really our mandate, to work in teams and to see people right from the beginning, not to wait until the disease has progressed, to see a team and to get advice. And I call this prehabilitation, so preventing things that might happen in the future. Our neighbors to the south are quite jealous of us in the United States because they don't have Medicare, and it's always about who's going to pay for the services. So instead, someone may have Parkinson's for 10 years, 15 years, they fall, they break a hip, and then the physio and the occupational therapists are involved in the rehabilitation. So I think we're really fortunate here for the prehabilitation, and it's important to seek services and advice right from day one to prevent and to make sure that you're autonomous as possible and you have all the services you need.
And to know that the services are there.
Yes, definitely.
Wow.
Definitely.
Fantastic. Well, that's a nice positive note to end on. Thank you so much for that. We cannot conclude this discussion without letting you know at home that there are many resources out there for you as well. The Parkinson Quebec website has a lot of information and a lot of activities that you can do online. I've checked them out and they're amazing. As well, a reminder that Parkinson's Quebec and its partners are continuously developing new resources to better serve you wherever you live in the province. You can consult the Parkinson Quebec website at parkinsonquebec.ca and social media for more. I want to thank our guest today, Elizabeth Robertson, an occupational therapist at the Montreal Neurological Institute. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
And Louise Mercier, caregiver and partner to a Parkinson's patient. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you. It was nice to be here.
And that concludes this episode of the podcast series In Search of Dopamine. The series is made possible through a grant from the Quebec government under its program Québec Amis des Aînés. Our topic today was preventing falls, but if you'd like to know more about this topic or others related to Parkinson's disease, you can consult the Parkinson Quebec website. That is at www.parkinsonquebec.ca, or you can call their support number 1-800-720-1307. And you can find more episodes of In Search of Dopamine in French and English on the Parkinson Quebec website and also on YouTube or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. I'm Caroline van Vlaardingen. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you again soon.